I'm ready.
Cool.
How is everybody doing? Do we need a stretch break? Time to stretch a little?
Yoga time.
Time for some water? Okay. So let me share my screen. And I guess I'll make it full screen so you can see everything. Okay. So I'm Fereshteh. Here's how you can get in touch with me, and I'll just get into it. The place from which I'm speaking to you is the traditional territory of the Miccosukee, Seminole, and Tequesta people. I live in South Florida in the US, in a place called Miami. And this is an image of the Miami Circle as it looks today. It's been landscaped, so it has these plantings, but it's actually an artifact believed to be about 2,000 years old. It was carved into the limestone bedrock. And this stone circle has a set of holes that are defining a line that runs east to west with a carving of a human eye at the east. So the cardinal directions were set in this circle. And it was created by the Tequesta people before this city was built on top of this stolen land. And you can see the harbor and the big condo buildings. And I'm starting with just pointing out where I am, because place is a really big part of my work and what I do in all my projects. Somehow I always come back to place. So I think that's why, for me, it's really important to talk about where I am and who has been here before me. So in addition to being here in South Florida, we're also on Jitsi, which it seems like it's a non-place, but it actually does travel through locations. So I was trying to find the locations of all the servers, and I saw a few people posting about it, but the one administrator just kept saying, well, if you want to know more, come to our meetings. Because it's open source. So I know that in Zoom, if you go into the settings, you can choose which regions you want to route your traffic through. And again, I bring this up because we're doing this online residency, and it feels like we're not in a place, but we are all in different places, and also that our data bodies are traveling through places that we don't even know. And the other thing about the place where I live, and I think some people in the previous presentations mentioned, is that not only are we in the United States on stolen land, but the places that we live, many of them were built on the backs of people who came here against their will through the system of slavery. But also, even after that, there were other very harsh and inhumane labor systems, using prisoners to build the railroads, using immigrants to do the same, to work the land. Also, people were in kind of labor positions where they were getting paid, but they were in such great debt that it was a kind of slavery. It was a kind of servitude that they could never escape from. So that's the legacy of the place where I live. But the place where I'm from, and I want to show you some older work, is that my family is from Iran. They came to the United States in the 70s. There was a revolution in Iran in 1979. And but I've lived in the United States all my life. And when I traveled back to Iran for the first time, I was doing a project, or I I was able to go there because I got a research grant to do a project about the carpet industry in Iran. So not necessarily individual craftspeople, though each of the carpets is touched by hands, but like the larger industry of carpet making. And of course, there are many countries that have a carpet industry. I was focusing on Iran because that's where I was from. And so what ended up from this project was a series of these short videos. I call them actualities because it's a kind of verite version of early documentary. So these processes, for example, this is where they're trimming the carpet, the pile of the carpet, and this is where the vat.
Recording is on.
Okay, now we can go on.
Okay, so yeah, this image in the corner is for grinding henna. So that would be used in some of the coloring. And these men are part of a kind of system where people would artificially age the carpet actually for commercial sale. So this is an older project, but I thought it would be relevant to bring up, thinking about so many of us working with textiles and the ways that some more traditional handcrafts have changed through scale. I remember we were talking about that the other day with the fashion industry and what the production line of contemporary fashion is like. So I was thinking about that in terms of carpets. And another older work that I did a few years ago when I was living in Chicago was in a gallery setting with these pickles that I made that were also from my family's heritage. In Iran, there's a kind of pickle known as the 7-year pickle. And it's usually made with garlic, and it ages for a long time, 7 years or more. Like there are some people who have jars of pickles that are for many generations, and people will start a jar much bigger than this one that you're looking at for a special occasion, like the birth of a child or a marriage or that kind of thing. I tried to use text because I know that well, not everyone here is speaking English as their first language, but I'm not reading the text, so I'm afraid I'm kind of distracting you, but I'll just read this part. I was contrasting the traditional Iranian folk methods of pickling vegetables in large clay pots and aging them in cellars with the more strict rules of Chicago health codes, the city I was in, that prohibit commercial kitchens from canning because it is considered a risky food preparation process. So there was actually a story around that time where the restaurants who had been doing non-commercial pickling practices or small-scale pickling, they had to throw all their pickles out, all the fermentation products that they had made, because they weren't up to the health code of the city. And of course, health codes are made to protect people, but sometimes they also don't recognize these kind of traditional practices. And in that same show, I had this other piece, Financial Crisis Mycoremediation, which mycoremediation is just a word that refers to the use of fungi to break down toxins and contaminants in the environment. In this piece, oyster mushrooms, known to excel in bioremediation, are decomposing some canonic works representing the rise of neoliberalism and the global financial crisis. And so you don't see all the books in this picture, but there are books including guides about risk management, texts authored by Chicago School economists like George Stigler. So the Chicago School was a group of economists or kind of philosophy that came out of the University of Chicago. And also books by and about figureheads who represented neoliberalism, like Margaret Thatcher or Deng Xiaoping. So those are some of the older projects I wanted to show you, and I want to focus the rest of my presentation more on my current performance work. My performance work involves encounter, exchange, and sensory inquiry. During immersive events designed for small groups, the audience participates in making meaning through embodied interaction. So this piece is a garden in the city that was started. Actually, there's a paper making area now. It was just a temporary space that was given to us to use while they waited to raise money before they could build a large building there. And while we had this space, some of the paper makers, people who make paper, grew plants for making paper. I was working with people on my practice of horticultural therapy or therapeutic horticulture, and involving people in learning, teaching, and doing performance with plants. Some other examples of my work include a walking performance about lithium mining in Tibet. So I've been to Tibet twice, and after the second trip, I made this piece that you're seeing back when I returned to Chicago to kind of share some of the stories and also things that I was thinking about in terms of the mining industry there, but that also is represented in other places in the world. I also did an overnight camp for broadcasting the dawn chorus of birds and an experimental documentary featuring food heritage stories. So just to give you a sense of some of my projects. So my new project, the one that I'm working on now, is called Oil Ancestors. It's inspired by my experience as a first-generation immigrant of Iranian and Azeri heritage. So Iran is bordered by Azerbaijan, and these borders are obviously things that have changed, and my family is part of an ethnic group that also represents that border region. And so my parents' first language is actually Azeri, which is a kind of, I guess it's almost like a dialect of a Turkic language. I'm not a linguist, so don't quote me on that. But they spoke a different language than Persian, Farsi, that most of the country speaks. And they, now they speak English, so they have 3 languages. So this period of time when I grew up and when actually my parents grew up too, has been defined by petroleum imperialism and war. And this has defined the relationship between our homeland and my current home in the US. The legacy of fossil fuel money and armed conflict also impacts many parts of the Caribbean, South and Central American countries that are represented among Miami's immigrant residents. So this is, I won't get into the history of the US involvement in, and British and all other things in the 50s in Iran, but you see that these folks are changing the sign from the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company to the British Petroleum Company on this building. So this is a website I've been working on. It is modeled after an actual company called Ancestry.com that Americans consult to. They log in and they can access some kind of database around ancestry records in the United States. I've never used it because it doesn't seem like it would be very useful for me as someone whose family never lived in the United States before my generation. but their website looks exactly like this, except that it's not oil ancestry, it's ancestry. But I wanted to think about this idea of oil or petroleum as one of my ancestors, but also the ancestor of all of us who are surrounded by and use petroleum products. Our lives, our food comes to us with that substance. Even our clothing, polyester, for example, our hygiene products, shampoos, lotions, many of these products, and even some of our foods have oil, petroleum in them, crude oil. And so I was thinking about this real connection to this substance. And so on my site, I've been working on a few links, and it's meant to be a kind of spoof of ancestry.com, but it goes a little deeper, and I'm eventually going to turn it into a performance that I hope will be presented next year. So just giving you back to a bigger picture overview, in my projects, the audience listens, walks, or even floats to explore each performance site while engaging in a series of sensory experiences and group meditations. So in this room, actually, this was a collaboration I did with someone, maybe some of you know, Hannah Perner-Wilson, who was probably at the part of the e-textiles camps, which I never attended, but I know many of you did. And that's Hannah here, and I'm here, and we're doing this kind of meditation on a piece of paper as one of the just work in progress things that we were trying out during this residency last year. And I'll show you the circuit that Hannah was making in a moment. And this was our final performance when we took people out onto the grounds of the place where the residency was and guided them. And this was the circuit that we led them to, that Hannah designed. Unraveling Our Material Knots was this collaboration, a guided meditation in noticing the electrical conductivity of materials, including those part of our own bodies. And then the tree, you kind of connecting to the land and the trees was part of it too. So in the works that I'm doing, people are invited to slow down, reflect, and reconnect to the layers of human and other than human life in the landscape. My audiences learn about the indigenous history of the land, speculate about ecological futures, and construct their own spatial narrative based on a series of somatic and affective activities. So here I've asked people to find a stone that is calling to them, and we have some time to consider the history of that stone, what that stone knows and has witnessed over its lifetime as a stone, and what we can learn from listening to it. It's hard. I think it's best when you try these things for yourself, but I want to give you a kind of sense of what it's about overall. So I'm influenced by my studies of horticultural therapy, forest therapy, and contemplative practices. And this idea of forest therapy is actually a very kind of new concept that started in the 80s, the 1980s. In Japan, scientists and doctors were looking for ways to prescribe outdoor time for their patients who are very stressed out in very difficult office jobs. So they decided to study people's their bio reactions to outdoor time. How is their stress level before a walk in the forest and after a walk in the forest? And there are chemicals that trees emit, at least certain trees emit that are actually really good for humans. So in Japan, it's called shininyoku, and it is part of what informs the kind of work that I'm doing too. But their American version is, I think, a little different. There's an organization here that has started training people as forest therapy guides. The work is based on the understanding that regenerative cultures are rooted in deep relationships with other species. Without regenerative relationships, culture begins to break down. So if we are not creating these regenerative relationships with the land, with the earth, with the water, then our own culture is suffering from that. And I think we see a lot of evidence of that these days. Drawing attention to ways that human culture and geography are entangled shifts the audience's ability to notice, witness, and transform these intersections. So I'm really inviting people to do something that many of us may have done as children, or we already do, but maybe just kind of enhancing that or reconnecting to practices that are difficult to keep in our lives when so much of our time is spent in other ways. We as humans used to spend a lot more time outside and working outside. Our livelihoods were outside, and actually, so there's this sense that like now the outdoors is seen as a place for recreation, but it's all intertwined. And of course, that is not for everyone. There are still people who work the land to bring us our food and other things we use. And so there are also questions about like who gets to access these health benefits and who is excluded from that. So this is a horticultural or a therapeutic horticulture workshop I did at a museum in Chicago, teaching people about the Three Sisters plants that are from the indigenous traditions here. And it was raining that day, so we came inside to do the workshop. So my Miami-based events include kayak outings that explore water as medicine. My recent water radio performances, participants are invited to play a water conductivity sound circuit, very simple, taste sea plants, make rubbings of mangrove bark, and feel the resistance of water on their skin. Water radio is a listening and broadcast technology. How can we listen to what the earth is communicating to us while also communicating in reciprocity? What happens when we read poetry aloud to, with, for other people, but also to an audience of the land and the sea? How do the mangroves respond to human authors? What kind of poetry does the ocean enjoy? This was one of the nighttime outings. I did 6 nighttime kayak outings here on Biscayne Bay. Right now, the bay is really hurting because we had a big fish kill. Many fish are dying very suddenly, and nobody's sure exactly why, but there are many reasons that are compounding the fertilizer runoff from industry, but also there's a sewage system that is old and has not been updated, and it's leaking. And then the temperatures are rising. So many factors compounding to really hurt this beautiful waterway that also kind of is the focal point of this place where I live. I have a lot of other slides, but I'm gonna stop now because I think I'm at my time here. But maybe just to give you a sense, I don't know, I could share the video if there is, like, it's about 3 minutes, but I could also just stop here.
Yeah, 3 minutes will be fine, I think. Maybe you can, yeah, you can share it now.
Let's go back to the sharing. Maybe I'll share the whole screen actually. Then if I go here, yeah, let's share the whole screen. Because I wanted to show you, I've just been thinking about all the different connections that I've been feeling with everybody here, and I want to collaborate with all of you. Like this idea of the oil and water marbling together is really enticing to me. Also, I was really getting into solar. This is just a little solar panel bot that I made. It's just a simple small motor powered by the sun. And the sun here is very strong in South Florida. Florida is known as the Sunshine State. And so I've just been thinking about that. These are just remnants of solar panels, so that I'm, thinking about the waste stream of these electronics. And yeah, I'll just stop that and show you this video. Yeah. Hopefully you'll get the sound. It was a little promotional video, so. The thing that inspired reading camp was that I was doing these forest immersion walks. And I thought, well, here in Miami, we're just surrounded by water, and I really want to be able to take people out on journeys on the water. So I applied for the Ellie's Award through Light Arts, and I was really so grateful when I received that award, because it helped to support the development of this reading camp project. We have a 2-hour journey together, read poems. We read them together because I'm really interested in this experience of what it means to read together. And after we finish our outing, we come back on the land and we have a campfire with s'mores, and it should be really fun. So I hope you will join us. This is the last little clip. and then I'll stop. All right, everyone. Oh, thank you. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And the video is so cute. I love the background music. It makes you really want to join the trip. And do we have any questions?
Your
Yeah.
last performance, your last video, in what consists with person near the river?
The question was what are they doing?
Yes.
Yes. So basically, they have. I made an exposure of the cyanotype. Do you know cyanotype?
No, and sounded, but no, I don't know.
Okay. Cyanotype is an alternative photo process that is not in a dark room. Though you can do it in the dark room, but it's using chemicals. Just you mix two chemicals, and then it creates a blueprint. Basically, it's the old blueprint like they would make for architects. And you coat the paper with this this liquid and let it dry, and then it's a kind of direct photography process. So if I place the ruler on the paper, it will make the shape. The light will expose the paper.
Okay.
And then the only thing you need to develop this print, this direct print, is water. And I wouldn't do it on a large scale because it would be very harmful to just put these chemicals in the water. But in a small scale, it's not such a toxic process. So I asked people to use the river water to develop their images. And all you do is just make it wet, and then the image appears. That's what they were doing, almost like a tea bag.
Okay. Thank you. Very interesting, and your social works and work with nature, social nature and technologies. Very interesting. Very interesting.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I would like to say thank you, and especially for your mind. It's really beautiful. The vision. Sometimes I'm too technical, and I really appreciate this vision you have. How you approach those. Yeah, I mean the meaning from your work. You try to convey a style or a way to live, or it's super. It's super.
Thank you. I'm inspired by you and everyone here. So that's why we're collaborating, I think. So we can mix it together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Fereshteh. And I think we can move forward to Yaya. Thank you.